This is the VOA Special English Education Report. International students have a lot of questions about studying in the United States. But what do you suppose is the most common question? We asked an expert right here in our building. Jessica Stahl is editor of VOA's Student Union blog. Jess blogs for international students interested in American higher education. She says the #1 question she gets is about financial aid and scholarships. Money is everyone's biggest concern. But unfortunately, that question is also the one with the most complicated answer. The short answer is this: financial aid programs are often just for American students. But programs for international students do exist. You just have to look for them. Jess says probably the next most often question is about language skills. People want to know how to improve their English. Of course, one way many students improve their English is with special English, like this program. But we like the Student Union's glossary of confusing words used in education. Readers can send in suggestions. One newly added word is catalog. An international student advisor wrote to say that new students generally have no idea what a university catalog is. So the glossary now includes this definition: a university catalog or college catalog is an official publication that contains all of the information a current or prospective student might need about academics and student services at a university. Jess has a group of foreign student bloggers at American schools. Even they were unsure what a catalog is. The students share their experiences studying in the United States. For example, how they feel when they face cultural stereotypes. Simba from Zimbabwe recently wrote about going to lunch with a group of American students. Simba said he felt hurt when one of them was surprised to learn that Facebook is available in Zimbabwe. Jess says the Student Union and its Facebook page get a lot of comments. She hears from a lot of students from China, Pakistan, Nigeria, Indonesia, pretty much all over the world. Jess gave us a list of websites where you can research colleges and universities, financial aid, and more. You can find that list at voaspecialenglish.com. She says the only must-know site for all international students is Education USA from the State Department. The address is educationusa.info. And if you only know one other site, it should be Study in the States from the Department of Homeland Security. That address is studyinthestates.dhs.gov. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Outdoors in the open air seems like a natural place to study natural science. It also makes sense in a place like Southern California, where people like to be outside a lot. Now, the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County is working to bring the indoors to the outdoors for its visitors. The museum has redesigned an outdoor space into a living exhibit. This is a big change for the 1.5 hectare area. It used to include a parking lot. Now, instead of cars, it welcomes birds, butterflies, and other living things. Scientists who work at the museum come outside to describe plants and insects in the natural setting of this outdoor laboratory. Greg Pauly specializes in studying turtles, like the western pond turtle. He tells the students how development has changed its natural habitat. He says these turtles are happiest around small bodies of water that grow and shrink with the seasons. He tells the students that 150 years ago, before there were very many people in the area, all the streams were just seasonal streams. And the western pond turtle loved that habitat, he says, and with people, we have changed the habitat. Today, he says, there is a lot more permanent water, like a pond at the Natural History Museum itself. And he says the changing habitat is one reason why western pond turtles are shrinking in number. In addition to science lessons, the open-air exhibit can provide contact with nature in a way that some city children rarely get. Landscape architect Mia Lehrer says children can get real-life answers to questions they may be wondering about. For instance, she says some children do not know that ketchup comes from tomatoes, and they can see what strawberry plants look like to know that strawberries do not just come from a container in the store. Only parts of the new outdoor campus are open now, but Karen Wise says more changes are coming. Ms. Wise is the museum's vice president for education and exhibits. She says, now we are opening up the whole museum, making it an indoor-outdoor experience so that our visitors can be a part of the experience. The work is expected to be completed by June of 2013. Next year is the museum's 100th anniversary. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read, listen, and learn English with more education stories at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find a video about the new outdoor exhibit at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Some young Cambodians are learning a new sport, skateboarding. The country's first skateboard park is located on the grounds of a local charity group at the edge of Phnom Penh, the capital. 15-year-old Chea Sopanet has been skating for about 6 months. When I see the different styles from skateboarding, especially from the best skaters, I just want to be like them, he says. Sports like Khmer boxing and soccer are wildly popular in Cambodia. But Chea says skating has already become his favorite sport. The skaters are learning tricks like launching off a jump or half pipe and flying through the air on their narrow wooden boards. A non-governmental organization called Skateistan Cambodia organizes weekly programs at the park. Skateistan started its work in Afghanistan. Rory Burke works with the group, which expanded to Cambodia last year. He says skateboarding is definitely not a typical Cambodian pastime. He says they want to use it as something that says, hey, this is something different. Skateistan partners with local groups that work with young people. The park is on the grounds of the group known as PSE, where children attend school and learn a trade. There are almost 120 participants. Many come from troubled lives. Sean Burke says for some, Skateboarding is a chance just to be a kid for a couple of hours a week. He says he hopes the program will help them build life skills through sport. 17-year-old Song Rota is a student at PSE. Sometimes I don't do well on topics like math, he says. I feel bad when I find it hard to keep up with my lessons. So that's why I skateboard, to improve my bad feelings. He says he began skateboarding more than a year ago. Before he started training, it seemed very easy, but it was very difficult to learn tricks, and he got hurt a lot from falling off. Rory Burke says learning to deal with the difficulties is part of the lesson for these young skateboarders. He says it's pretty daunting to get on a skateboard for the first time. And then, when they drop in for the first time and ride some of the ramps, it's pretty scary. It kind of teaches them, hey, you're going to fall down a bunch, but you've got to get back up. Skateistan, Cambodia plans to open the country's first public skate park later this year in Phnom Penh. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter. You can watch a video about the skateboarding program in Cambodia at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Thousands of protesters, including teachers, students, parents, and pro-democracy activists, marched in Hong Kong in late July. They were protesting a plan to teach Chinese patriotism classes in Hong Kong schools. Organizers said 90,000 people marched to the government headquarters, but police gave a lower estimate of 32,000. The Hong Kong government says the classes are meant to build Chinese national pride. The government plans to require the classes in elementary schools starting in 2015. But the government is urging schools to voluntarily launch the program when schools reopen this September. The curriculum includes a teaching booklet called the China Model. It praises the one-party rule of the Communist Party. However, it says nothing about the crushing of pro-democracy protests in Beijing in 1989. Ting Qing Chan has been teaching primary school for 38 years. He says he was not persuaded by the booklet. I don't even believe the content myself, so it's difficult to teach my students, he says. Chan Ye Long, a 9-year-old student in the march, said, China wants to unify Hong Kong. Our next generation only knows how great China is, but not the bad stuff. Protester Paul Young, a parent of 2 children, says he worries that too much one-sided education is not good for the mental development of young people. The protest was another sign of public concern about what critics see as the Chinese government's interference in the former British colony. Britain returned Hong Kong to China on July 1st, 1997. China promised to let the territory largely govern itself. This year, more than 100,000 people joined a pro-democracy march on July 1st. It was the largest such gathering in 8 years. Many of the protesters demanded that the city's new leader resign. Lang Jun-ying took office earlier that day. He was chosen by a mostly pro-Beijing committee. Willie Lam is a China specialist in Hong Kong. He says people in Hong Kong have lost trust in the Hong Kong government. He says they are afraid the administration of Lian Junying will take orders from Beijing to support the Communist Party and not spread knowledge of China in a fair way. To read, listen, and learn English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find our caption videos at the VOA Learning English channel on YouTube. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. In West Africa, students and teachers are busy with the new school year. However, aid workers say most of the children in northern Mali are unable to go to school. Militants, including some from the group Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, took control of the north in April. The Islamists are enforcing their own severe form of Sharia law in the occupied territory. The United Nations Security Council is urging West African countries to speed up preparations for a military intervention in northern Mali. There are concerns that the conflict might spread to other countries. Large numbers of northerners have fled to the government-held south or to neighboring countries for safety. Tom McCormick is the Sahel director for the aid group Save the Children USA. Save the Children is part of the Education Cluster, a group created by the UN to coordinate the emergency response in Mali. The Education Cluster says the 240,000 students remaining in the north have little or no access to education. Cluster official Joa Keys says this increases the risk of children being recruited as child soldiers. He says children who are not in school are vulnerable to falling into the hands of armed groups. The Education Cluster surveyed 25 organizations in the north. 3/4 of them said local schools had been vandalized or destroyed. Half reported that teachers had fled to the south, and 1/3 said armed groups occupy schools. Human rights groups say the Islamists are actively recruiting children as young as 12 years of age. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.